Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik from Figure It Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and if you're watching this the day it came out, it is the 3-year birthday of the Xbox Series X. Yes, it has actually been 3 years, and if you didn't see it, a couple days ago I released a video similarly about the PlayStation 5 celebrating its 3rd birthday, and the only reason we haven't done the Nintendo Switch is because its birthday is in March, so stay tuned for when that comes up, or if you saw it earlier this year, depending on which one you want. Before we get into all the details about the last calendar year of the Xbox Series X, if you guys could do me a favor, I would appreciate if you like this video, comment down below, subscribe if you've never done that before, and check out all my social media stuff in the description. I've got Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, Patreon. I really appreciate that one. Spreadshirt, as well as my travel channel. I appreciate the support on those things. Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and talk about it. Now, if you did not see my PS5 video, I have to reiterate a couple of points. First, due to scheduling conflicts, I have to film this earlier than I wanted to. So I apologize if some major thing happens around the time of this and I wasn't able to talk about it. It didn't happen when I recorded this. So I'll do my best, but just keep that in mind. So, yeah. Now, I also mentioned in that video, and it's important to note and repeat, I like to study video game console history, right? I've done tons of videos on it, and I find it fascinating to be able to do videos about the major consoles on their anniversaries as they're, still relevant, because it kind of maybe eventually get people a look back at what people were thinking around those times. And I used to do this for like the PS4 and the Xbox One and the Wii U, but obviously they stopped being relevant, so I stopped doing them. The only one I do that's not relevant is the Dreamcast, just because it's my favorite system ever, and it still gets new releases, so whatever. But yeah, that's pretty much my motivation here, and I know you guys love these, and I love just talking about it, so let's do it. Now, because I also study video game history, I do know one little fact that I said there, and I'll say again. The most interesting time in a video game console's life, if it's successful, is the very beginning and the very end. And the reason for that is the very beginning is when they're coming up with all the ideas about how the model's going to go. So that's when you're hearing about all the new hardware and hearing about all their plans and everything to do, and you're not really sure what direction it's going to go. Basically, that's when companies take a risk. Now, towards the end of the lifespan, they tend to be more prone to risks as well because the system has already been a success. They're gearing up for the next thing, so they're more or less willing to try to do something else bizarre. Sometimes that can lead to, accessories and add-ons and stuff like that, slim models, what have you, and sometimes it just leads to nothing. But whatever. The problem is the middle, which is where I'm sad to say we are, is what is known, I should say, the don't rock the boat phase. Meaning a system at this point, 3 years in, the Xbox Series X is successful. Congratulations, Microsoft, you are doing fine. And that means that they're not going to change too much stuff about the system. They're not going to have all right, we're coming out with an expansion pack that now plays 32X games or whatever. I miss Sega, but they were a little too crazy. But you get my point. They're not going to do anything that bizarre. So if I had to be honest with you, it hasn't been the most exciting year for them. I would say that this year, it was really one thing defined it for both Microsoft and Sony. More so Microsoft, obviously, because it was more about them, which was the acquisition of Activision. Sony spent a whole year just trying to block that every way they could. Well, Microsoft, obviously, I think bit off more than they could chew. I don't think they realized how much work that was actually going to be. And in their defense, their history of absorbing other companies, it's never been that hard, at least video game companies. They got Bethesda relatively quickly, and if you go back years, there wasn't that much effort for them to get Rare and so on and so forth. They've obviously gotten others. But, I think Activision was just a little bit of a bridge too far, and that's why it caused them so many problems. So the Xbox Series X and the Series S, to be fair, at this point in time, at the last time I was able to check, its sales numbers were collectively about 21 million worldwide, which is decent for its lifetime. It has outsold various systems in history. It's doing fine, relatively speaking. But the majority of its numbers come off of the United States and Canada. The Xbox brand doesn't really make much of an attempt to compete in Asia anymore. And it never really, it tried in Japan, but the rest of Asia it barely acknowledges. And in Japan, they've more or less given up. It tries to compete in Australia, obviously in Europe. The only part, ironically, in Europe it ever tended to do kind of well was the UK. We'll have to see what really will come of that, because a lot of the details of it really required Microsoft to kind of give up a lot for that to work. Like, they no doubt bought Activision with the intention of having a lot of exclusives, not just things like Crash Bandicoot or Spyro, but also things like Call of Duty. And now they've been kind of forced to put that on competing hardware for the foreseeable future. And I know they were more willing to cut a deal with Nintendo because Nintendo was a little bit nicer to them. My point is, the Activision acquisition seems to be basically over. And I also feel like that is going to kind of motivate their actions for the next few years. They have to finish digesting that. And I don't think they're going to be willing to touch any other major game studio anytime soon. Maybe a small indie studio here or there, or whatever it is. But like, there was a time, we got a bunch of Xbox leaks earlier this year, which was jumping ahead a little bit. But in there, they were talking about other studios they had considered picking up. But jokingly, they threw out the idea of Nintendo, which, if you listen to my podcast, I basically debunk why that was never going to happen for Japanese legal reasons. But that doesn't really matter. The one that I thought made a lot of sense, and I actually said this well before the leaks ever happened, was I always thought WB Games was a good fit, formerly Midway, because Warner Brothers has wanted out of the gaming industry for a while. They don't care about it anymore. And it looked like a good choice, and apparently Microsoft considered it. And I think had the Activision acquisition gone smoothly, they probably would have done WB Games. But now I think they just kind of be like, no, we're going to stay away from this for a little while and just let it settle. So it is what it is. Apologies if you hear sirens outside. Yeah, that's Microsoft, coming by, not wanting you to know the secrets. No, not really. But yeah, anyway, so beyond that, let's talk about those Xbox leaks, because honestly, that was where the most interesting stuff happened this year. Because as far as games go, they just kind of did what they're supposed to do. They just put out new stuff, obviously with a huge focus on Game Pass. They got rid of Xbox Games with Gold in favor of Xbox Game Pass Core, so they're kind of pushing everybody over to that one way or another. And as far as the games go, while they have their exclusive content, they just kind of throw it out there, and they just say, whatever, play it or don't. They don't seem to really push any one game too much, with the one exception being Starfield, which was really their big game this year, which ironically was theirs and it wasn't. It was a Bethesda title that Bethesda had been working on for years, even before the Microsoft acquisition, but it is wholly owned by Microsoft now, so it's whatever. But I would argue that was their big title for the year, and people seem to really love that game. I haven't played it personally, but a lot of people said it's amazing. And I would say that this year in general, each one of the console manufacturers kind of got one. Nintendo got Tears of the Kingdom as like the big system seller push console game. Sony got Spider-Man 2, and Microsoft got Starfield. I mean, that was kind of it. But in general, yeah, it was just kind of a nothing year in that way. Like, there were good games. I'm not saying there weren't. It's just there weren't too many that really cracked that that upper echelon of like pop culturedom in general. Not just for Microsoft, but like really anybody. Like, those were the three, and that was kind of it. But that's just my take on it. So they were doing fine, all the Game Pass stuff. But again, those Xbox leaks. Let's focus on that, because the most important thing to come out of that, in my opinion, was what I've always been kind of warning people about for years, which was the all-digital future. Now, it's no secret, obviously, Microsoft has been pushing more and more towards the digital era. We saw that originally with the Xbox One when they wanted the whole DRM thing. We're not going to go down the memory lane of that. But, then we got the Xbox One SAD edition, or, without the disc, the S without a disc, all digital. And then, of course, the Xbox Series S, which is an all-digital machine. According to the leaks, at least a year ago, but now more like a year and a half ago, not quite a year and a half, like a year and 3 months, Microsoft was considering, and probably still is, an upgraded version of the Xbox Series X that is all digital. And upgraded meaning minor upgrades, not like, say, the Xbox One to the Xbox One X, but more like Xbox One to Xbox One S, which is a little confusing. But if you guys remember the upgrade there, it was a smaller system, it ran a little better, it had a 4K Blu-ray drive, and like minor improvements stuff. Nothing like game-changing, unlike, say, Xbox One to Xbox One X, which, it was like 40% more powerful. It was like a half-generation upgrade. With this, what they call Project Brooklyn spelled wrong, on purpose, I guess, an IN instead of a YN. The idea is an Xbox Series X that's all digital, looks more like a trash can is what people are joking about, and it is all digital. And to be honest, there is a logic to that. When you're Microsoft, you've been losing money on the hardware forever, and the disc-based media has always been your opponent. You've never wanted it. So it makes sense that they're getting closer and closer to just kind of cutting out discs entirely. I've been warning people about this for years, and it's like we're getting a lot closer to that point where Microsoft's kind of being like, look, we don't really care if you're on board or not because we own all these major developers. If you want anything from Activision or Bethesda or anybody else that we own, you're going to have to eventually get on board with us. And most of our bases, to be honest, they seem to be trying to appeal to PC gamers who aren't really interested in embracing them. You know what I mean? Or trying to convert us into like a half step between. It's a weird philosophy over there, but it clearly works for them. And that was the genius of Game Pass, was basically give away the razor to sell the blades. Hey, subscribe to Game Pass. It's like a few bucks a month and you get like all these games. Go nuts. I see why people do it. I don't do it, but I see why people do. The idea is give you a taste, get you hooked, keep you around. And then eventually jack up the price when you don't have competition. Anyway, but that's what we're going towards. Now, further evidence of this, in addition to that design, which, by the way, at least at the time I'm recording this, is not an official product. It doesn't actually exist yet, and it may never. It was just a discussion they were having internally. But it also very well could happen, and it would not shock me at all. Because you have to look at the other side bits of evidence that go around it. The Xbox Series X, most of its physical editions are basically Xbox One discs that just have a ton of patches you have to download to have the Series X version. There's only a handful of Series X specific discs. And off the top of my head, it's still only like Flight Simulator, and I think there's a couple of sports games, ironically. There's not many of them. Unfortunately, that's kind of where we're going with it. And I predicted that years ago. I always thought that there was a possibility that if they had made that decision earlier about disc versus discless and they cut out the disc versions, that maybe they would be like, okay, thanks for buying a disc edition of the system. We're no longer producing discs. As a way to compensate you, we're going to send you a $50 gift card, and you can continue to enjoy that great physical or digital Xbox experience. Just kind of a PR way of being like, thanks, here's some gift card credit. I would not be surprised at all if they announce at some point within the next year or two, we're done with discs, and here's a gift card. Enjoy your Xbox experience. Will still work just fine, but only now through the experience of Xbox downloading. We have to remember Starfield, which is what I was just talking about, was their big game this year, the big one, and it almost didn't have a physical edition. It didn't have a physical edition in the collector's set. They did eventually, put out a physical edition in just kind of a basic case, probably just to appease people. And maybe that was a little bit of backsliding where they thought maybe we can't quite get away with this one yet. Unfortunately, this is around the corner, guys. Like, it is possible that this system, the Xbox Series X, the one that's right here in front of me, this model, is possibly the last disc-based edition of an Xbox console ever. Now, we don't know that, obviously. It could be dead wrong. They might do continued market research and be like, we should probably keep it around. But one of the side arguments, if you can't even argue that the games matter anymore, because like I said, most of the games that are disc-based for Xbox are Xbox One games, not necessarily Series X games. They just happen to work on Series X and be enhanced when you play them on there. You can make the case like, well, people still need to be able to play their 4K Blu-rays and their Blu-rays and their DVDs, like, and music CDs. Like, really? I don't know if there's going to be that many people making that case anymore. 4K Blu-ray has not really taken off as well. Blu-ray never even took off as well as DVDs did. DVDs are very old technology. Obviously, music CDs. I give Microsoft props. This thing does read them, but even like the PlayStation 5, PS4 even, don't read music CDs. So I don't know how much they would care about that. In fact, there's already movie studios that are starting to back out of Blu-ray entirely. And DVD. Like, DVD is largely getting phased out now. And to be fair, that one actually kind of makes sense. But, like, the one that shocked me was when I saw that Disney was deciding to withdraw physical Blu-rays in Australia. Now, for those who don't know, Australia is like the king of physical Blu-ray and DVD media. For them to not have Disney making content anymore, shocking. But then at the same time, due to the recent writers' strike, and I talked about this in a video about the price raising of PlayStation Plus and to a lesser extent Xbox price, which did increase, by the way, just not nearly as much. There was a strike over, licensing rights and, how much writers should be comped and all that sort of stuff that eventually led to Disney also releasing physical editions of some of their Disney Plus shows. The Mandalorian and some of the Marvel stuff. The only reason I bring that up is that, while that is obviously not game related, it just kind of shows the state of the industry, entertainment industry, and the technology industry as they kind of cross together, and like what's going on over there. It is possible that there might ironically be some sort of comeback to physical media, kind of in the way that there was with vinyl records. It's not impossible, and it just depends on how quickly, if that happens at all, that it does, for Microsoft to be like, okay, maybe it's worth keeping the disk drive on there for the future for this X, Y, and Z reason. But that's obviously purely speculative. So, yeah, what I guess I would say kind of in conclusion here is that the Xbox Series X had a fine year for what it wants to do, which is to offer you a decent, or if not good, Xbox experience. I just question if I want that particular experience anymore. I give props to Sony. They are much better about the physical media side of things. Obviously, Nintendo is pretty good at it, but Microsoft has just been getting worse and worse and worse about it. And that doesn't shock me at all. That's something we all saw coming. But it's just a little depressing as it inches ever closer and closer to the point where you can kind of see the end of the horizon there. But yeah, that's just my take on it for now. So if you're going to ask, like, do I think there's any sort of revision hardware or major announcements of that kind of thing? Not really, because I think a lot of it was spoiled in those leaks, assuming they have any validity. Again, the Xbox Series S or X Slim S, whatever you want to call that. Their naming convention is confusing, obviously. It would not shock me if we see that in 2024. But would they get rid of the current Xbox Series S? My guess is probably, because apparently a lot of devs are like, it's cool that it's sold a bunch, but like it's really kind of holding us back. And because they already kind of stopped making versions of games that function on the base like VCR Xbox One, and so like it's catching up. So we'll see if they maybe stop supporting that particular system, and by stop supporting it I mean they stop making new units. Like the one you have isn't going to stop working, but like, you know what I'm saying. So that would be my guess, is there's a possibility of a revision of this. Now, whether or not they stick with disk drives, that's the big X factor. Ha, pun, not intended. Anyway, yeah, I guess that will do it. In a fantasy, I want to see them go back to the backwards compatibility program, because Activision, of course, had a bunch of titles for the 360 and the original Xbox that they could bring over to the system. I think that would be very cool. Don't know if there's any chance of that actually happening. They may just not care anymore about that. But that would be a nice gift, maybe in like a couple of years when we reach the anniversary of the original Xbox, because in 2020, it'll be a while, 2026 is when we reach the 25th anniversary of the original Xbox. We've already gone past the 20th, so it's kind of a little late for that. But, I mean, if you go to 2005, that was the Xbox 360 launch, so maybe in 2025 we can have a general Xbox 20th for Xbox 360 that also includes original Xbox. Who knows? Which might be the amount of time they still need to roll out the Activision merger anyway, so whatever. Anyway, that'll do it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Again, please go check out the PS5 one if you haven't, and stay tuned to, a few months from now when we do the Nintendo Switch one. So thank you very much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. Appreciate that. Check out all the social media stuff in the description: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, Patreon, Spreadshirt, Travel Channel. Appreciate the support on all those things. Thank you so much, and I'll see you all later.